in the being itself, there's lots of stuff there. It appears as though there's just being, but there's all sorts of liveliness there, all sorts of activity in that silence. I mean, initially, when we awaken to being the being, it's just a field of pure being. And there's silence, stillness, there's really nothing happening, or we could say everything is happening in the being and due to the being, but the being itself is not really doing much. It's just silent. But that's only because in the initial awakening to being consciousness itself, that it's not complete yet, because consciousness doesn't experience the full reality of itself. And so, rather than being a receptacle in which all the contents of the mind, body, world, universe are contained, being turns out to be everything, everywhere. And this is a remembrance that takes place in the being that was always there. That was always the reality, but it just wasn't experienced even by the being itself. Just the same as the being itself wasn't experienced by the mind, by the person. So there's the initial awakening to being is really just the first step in the knowing of the totality of being, of itself, what it really is. But that is the first necessary experience to get out of the mind and come back to the self, the real self that you have always been. Because it's so beautiful, I mean, to be out of that mind, that crazy mind, and all the life experience really on one level anyway, completely untouched by everything that's happening, and the experience is you find that the individual separate self, the ego sense, it doesn't exist. It wasn't really real in the first place. There was no individual self sense that I am just this person. To begin with, that was just a mind-made habit. Mind referring constantly back to itself as being this individual body-mind created just a boundary in consciousness, a false boundary in consciousness. And so we see that right from the beginning, that there's really no ego sense there, no individual separate ego sense there. And so this is this is an awakening, a real awakening, because from that perspective, what is all of this? It seems to be just happening by itself. All of the world, the senses perceiving, the mind thinking, the feelings feeling, all happening by themselves. But what is that by themselves? What is it that is actually doing the doing? So something else has to become awake to the being itself as to what is really doing. And so there's another awakening. The awakened consciousness awakens to being everything, everywhere, unity consciousness. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And it sees that what is doing, or what is propelling the doing, is really my own self in its experience of itself. My own, the self itself, not my little self, the big self itself, seeing itself everywhere within itself, is flowing and initially somehow creating the appearance of the universe and life and body, mind and everything. Somehow, that's somehow. And we don't really care much even in that perspective, because it's a beautiful thing, beautiful flow, beautiful flowing thing. The subject has become the object. The unbounded being itself has become, say, the objects, all objects of perception, including the apparent perceiver. So that's nice. That's really nice. But what is it that is really doing the doing? What is the doing? How did everything get here in the first place? What is all of this? What is the everything? Oh, sure. On that level, it's all myself, and I really don't care so much. I'm just enjoying things as they are, because everything's happening, still just happening as it should, So life goes on, continues. But what happens is perception refines. The perception refines. And what perception is propelled by? It's propelled by that knowing of consciousness of itself, which is everywhere, happening at every point throughout the infinity of being. It is consciousness, conscious of itself. Like here, right now, around us, in the field around us, even though there may appear to be some distinction, some separation between the seer, the seeing, and the seen. In truth, it's all one wholeness, one flow. In truth, it's all one field of presence, we could say, or wholeness, being maybe a little bit alive within itself. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing, because there is some aliveness, some liveliness in this space, in the presence around us here. Now, the presence is silent, but it's also alive. It's a live silence. And what is a live silence? It's silence knowing itself. It's consciousness knowing itself. And so that's a very beautiful thing, beautiful thing. And really it's through the increased depth of that experience of the flow of consciousness that the apparent individual nervous system gets refined. Because in truth, the individual nervous system is not individual. It is cosmic. At the finest levels of the nervous system are quantum mechanical, the quantum field reality of the body-mind, of the brain. And so the more that flow is of life is experienced more deeply, really, I would say, in any state of consciousness, because it can be, to some degree, experienced in any state, because it's really the flow of joy. It's the flow of joy. We may think that I am the person that is joyful and that I'm getting joy from that experience out there. But in truth, that's not really where the joy is coming from. The joy is inherent in the consciousness, conscious of itself being. It's like the cleanness, the clearness of consciousness itself, being awake to itself. Well, that is it's a pure joy that is there, that is found there. You know, if that pure joy is not found there, then the experience of consciousness experiencing itself is not experienced. That's all. You know? And so we just we live life from the level of thinking I am the person and there is a world out there, and life continues on with all of its experiences, all of its ups and downs, its joys and sorrows, all of that. And on one hand, it's okay. It's a beautiful life, even, if we're not too caught up in the kind of negative things that seem to be happening. It's a beautiful, kind of a beautiful life. But see, perception refines, and it continues to refine. The nervous system continues to refine. And the infinity of consciousness itself gets infused more deeply into the nervous system and into the person, so-called individual personhood. And that's a gradual thing. It doesn't happen suddenly, like some shifts can happen quite suddenly. But it's a gradual thing. It's the wearing away of the old habit of experiencing myself as this body-mind, and a wearing away of that individual, separate ego sense that sees a separate world out there. As that kind of honing takes place in the flow of consciousness, conscious of itself, a rarefied experience of what we experienced before as this person, that person, this person, that object, that and that. That kind of gets a deeper reality gets revealed. And what gets revealed is there is really no individual person. Not only is there not such a thing as an individual ego sense, there is really no such thing as an individual person. That individual person has been cosmic all along. It's been cosmic all along. And so all of the qualities of the personality, the personhood that we thought were me, turn out to be universal qualities. We'd have to say it's the whole of nature, the nature of the universe, the nature of man is all one and the same nature. And that is what your personhood is. It's a cosmic personhood. And so what we've seen is, and then of course most people still perceive just an individual ego sense, individual person functioning there. But what it really is this cosmic personality that is functioning, that arises due to the flow of consciousness, conscious of itself. Everything is inherent in that. So just like this wholeness, this presence around us now, yet the presence itself is all one thing. It's all one thing. And the aliveness in the presence around us right now is we'll just say this word, the quantum field reality of the apparent individual forms and phenomena that are around us right now. No forms and phenomena in reality have appear as an individual structure, but they're composed out of universal intelligence. So it's all cosmic. The whole thing is all cosmic. It's all universal. We're not individual people with individual ego senses that pop up now and again, pop up. No. It has always been universal intelligence acting through the appearance of individuality. There's never been any real individuality, just individuality to begin with. So, see, it's the thing. Without the consciousness experiencing the full value of itself, the workings of the mind, the body, the interactions between people the whole workings of life and nature cannot really be fathomed, cannot be understood. And so we see things from our perspective. Maybe some perspective is like this, maybe some perspective like this, some perspective like this, some perspective like this. But there's a boundary to the perspective, and but there's no boundary in consciousness. And in truth, consciousness is everything, everywhere. And so there's really no boundary in perspective. So this thing is just I don't know why we're talking about this here, because, well, we're in the process of giving a retreat right now, flow retreat. And these flow retreats are so beautiful because everyone is awake, and at least to being consciousness itself, unbounded. And so it's heightening to that consciousness to experience or remember a deeper value of itself, rather than just being the unbounded receptacle in which everything is contained. So there's a broader perspective, far broader perspective than just that initial awakening. And the truth, what's really going on in the life experience, cannot be appreciated from that perspective, cannot be known, at least fully, just from that perspective. The mind and body remain the same mind and body, even though the being may be unbounded. But in truth, all mind and body and everything is also unbounded. It's also infinite. It's also universal. It's also cosmic. And so we can only see things from our perspective, our own perspective. And from our perspective, it's right, it's truth. That's what we see. We see that truth from our perspective. But is it the complete truth? Well, no, it's not the complete truth, unless the fullness of consciousness is there, at least knows the full value of itself. But you know something, and I'll just tell you this because, I don't know, I feel like sharing it now. There's something even beyond consciousness, beyond the being, beyond the big self itself, which has to the self itself has to disappear, you say. Along with it, the rest of the universe, in order for the real divinity to come, to zoom forth, to really zoom forth in its radiance. And that's just a little tidbit I wanted to throw in. But anyway, We get back down here to Earth, and back to the moment right here. And of course, everything we've been speaking about is the moment. It is within the now, within the timeless being. But when we see from just a beautiful kind of a broader perspective of just seeing what is here now and being with what is here right now, what we see is there is this presence, this field of presence, see? And we see that, well, on one hand, the awareness is aware of the presence and stillness that is right in front of us. But on the other hand, the presence itself is in the awareness. And so is everything else, including the mind and body. Everything is in awareness itself. It's supported by, it's upheld by, it gets its life from the light of consciousness, which shines, beginning to shine even right now, a little bit more brightly through the objects that are in front of us, the objects of appearance. It can begin to shine a little bit more brightly through the mind that can have some thoughts there, or can shine brightly, more brightly through the well, when it shines more brightly, the emotions are not really found. The finer feeling is there that replaces the emotions. Just a finer feeling, a finer intensity of, we can call it the word intensity, maybe delicateness of the life becomes more alive, and the kind of moods in the mind and the thoughts in the mind, not so dominant, not so overshadowing. If they're overshadowing, I don't think we'd be listening to this. I think we would find something else to do, something more worthwhile from the perspective of the mind. So many important things out there to do for the mind to do, far more important than sitting here listening to this craziness. This is from the perspective of the mind. But really, something beautiful is happening if we can sit still and just be out of the grip of the mind and the emotions and the perceptions. When we're out of the grip of the perceptions, then what comes to the forefront is awareness itself. See? And, you see, the body-mind is also a perception. It's a perception of awareness itself. It's within awareness itself. Awareness itself is free. It's free from the perceptions, free from the emotions, free from the mind, free from the thoughts. And so it can soar. It can just soar on its own, level, unbounded there, being free, because it's so beautiful. This is the being itself, the being itself. But the rest of the body mind, can do whatever it wants to do. We don't care. It just does what it wants. Sometimes some thoughts come up, sometimes some emotions come up, and that's okay. We don't mind. What is important is to be with the being. Be. Now the being is not located somewhere deep within you. No, it's not located in some deep state of meditation on some transcendental level. No. Awareness itself, the being itself, is everywhere, all around you. Everything is encased in that being. The being is unbounded. It's cosmic, it's universal. It's infinity itself. And so nothing can touch that. Nothing can touch that. And being with that, if we can sit in that, from that perspective, where are the problems in life? It's near impossible to think or to entertain any kind of negativity or any kind of problem from that perspective, or have any kind of a judgment from that perspective. If one is really deeply in the being, judgment is impossible. And so well, maybe we're not deeply in the being. Maybe that's why the mind comes up with all its judgments and all of that. Well, maybe that's it. and that's okay. That's okay. We do the best we can. We're all growing. We're all in the process of we are all like on that potter's wheel, being cultured and refined, so that at some point the nervous system will be able to allow for the full perception of consciousness to come, rather than us being in our particular boundaries, and we see from those boundaries, we see what we see. we see, and what we see, and we see that it's right from that perspective, and from that perspective it's right. But is it complete? Is it complete? Well, we find out, no, to our great not surprise, but great amazement, really, that none of those perceptions, none of those thoughts, none of those judgments, none of those emotions, none of those feelings, none of those life situations that we saw as being true from that perspective, none of it is true from the broader perspective. It's just not true and does not apply. And so what we do for ourselves, our life, is not get too caught up in feeling that I know, I know this, and I know that, and I see through this, and I see through that. Don't get too caught up in all of that until you can really see from the broadest perspective. And when you see from the broadest perspective, you see that there is only divinity in play. We can say divinity in the knowing of itself, in the unfolding of more and more of its divine radiance to itself. And that's what creates the appearance of all of this life. So we continue on doing, what we're doing from our perspective, but just know that maybe that's not the total reality. Maybe there is something more, and maybe there are some apparent people who can see from a broader perspective. And fortunately, there are some people like that who have been in every age awakened, fully enlightened in every age, and have been really the guiding lights for all of mankind, all of humankind. And in this age, we're entering into an age now where a great awakening is taking place, and there's more lights now that are beginning to shine, and all we want to do, and all that we could say nature wants to do, is to help those in any way, form. Could be through hurricanes, or through tornadoes, whatever, earthquakes, but whatever. It's all nature wants, is doing that for, is to brighten that light, to help brighten that light, so that light is shining brightly and clearly, and so that there's more, we could say, apparent individual beings that can reflect and radiate the true divine life that is the reality, that is the only reality that is. So this is the thing. We just, from our perspective, sit back and relax a little bit when we get caught up in the mind and the drama of life out there. Just let go, sit back, relax, and at least drop back to some inner silence or peace or a little bit of joy that might be there, and just be with that, rather than having our attention so much on those thoughts that go on and on and on and on. When we do that, well, we empower that cosmic law of nature that is responsible for those kind of negative thoughts. And but we don't want to do that. We want to empower the divine reality, empower the being, empower the pure divinity that is really all there is. So anyway, it's beautiful. I have to get back to work, back to the retreat. So it's been a joy speaking to you and speaking to myself. And I hope somehow something along the line heard what is really being said. Not just the words, but what is we could say what's really speaking the words. What is really speaking the words, you know, and really hearing the words. You know? So it's that thing. It's that being, or the divine life, the divine flow of life that has really been attempting to speak and listen and act and feel through us all along. But the little mind and body and concepts and judgments have been there blocking that. But we don't mind. We just know deep down, deep within, that firstly, our perspective may not be the complete perspective, and know that our experience of reality may not really be that as it actually is. So we just enjoy, and let go, just let go and enjoy.